Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about SD-WAN, or more precisely, what is it? It's one of these terms that's been thrown around a lot in the last 12 months, and going into 2020 we're seeing more and more bigger brands adopt not only this term but this technology. What is it, and is it of any use to you? Maybe you're a home user or a small business user, maybe high-end enterprise, trying to get your finger on the pulse still. There are lots of reasons why SD-WAN has got a big future moving forward, and a lot of that is to do with cloud services. We're talking about a lot of the cloud providers out there, and we're not just talking about your Dropbox and your Google Drive and stuff like that. We are talking far more than that. Things like Azure, AWS, G Suite, Office 365. These are large cloud services and organizations that are being made available at a very cost-effective level to businesses, high, medium, and small enterprise indeed. And this is where SD-WAN is really coming into play. But before we go into that, let's talk about what SD-WAN is and what it isn't. More appropriately, what is WAN? WAN is a wide area network. We're familiar with it in a number of ways, from school to university to the first times we, dipped our toes into the world of work. Chances are, if you're ever involved in any kind of business in the last 20, 30 years that involved data in one form or another, you were dealing with WAN. What it is, a wide area network is more than just a normal local area network. A local area network, LAN, is lots of computers that are sharing the same internet connection network to be caveman, all in one place. A wide area network is multiple sites geographically. So a company, a small office, let's say Michael Scott Paper Company, let's say there is lots of locations. Each office has got a few staff, they deal calls, emails locally, and they all need to communicate data. So we've got several offices dotted around. Each of those offices might connect to a central server. That central server might be a third-party server offered by Google or Microsoft or something, or it could be their own server, like a network attached storage device. Either way, you've got a large server area with all of those offices communicating information to that server. Currently as well, that server might be integrated with online internet-only services, again, AWS, Azure, a few VMs, cloud services ultimately. And so the main server in the middle is connecting with those internet services as well. Now, all of these devices that are communicated together are required to be connected via the internet in one form or another, be it the internet or the wide area world, or the internet as in the individual offices needing to communicate with the main server. Each one of those locations will also have their own internet services, probably, because they'll have email, they'll have client data, they'll have backups, maybe they've got surveillance and the voice over internet or VoIP services, stuff like that. And they'll need to connect to the main server as well. That is a lot of traffic for both wired and wireless devices at each of those individual locations. Each of those individual locations might have a switch that's based in them, and those switches, like the ones we've talked about on the channel before, will be handling all of the data exchanged between all the devices in that local area network over a wide connection. But they still need the internet services, which means the network switch in those locations will be connected to a router, and the routers will be connecting via the internet to the main server. Even if they're enterprise grade routers, that's still going to be the kind of internet transit point between the local offices in each location and that main server. Now, even if all of those individual offices were connecting directly with the internet services, AWS and Office 365 and G Suite and stuff, via their individual locations, that's still a lot of traffic. And until SD-WAN, it wasn't as efficient as it could be. The reason being that back when WAN was first really being developed back in the early noughties and really took hold in business, it was not ready for these internet services that exist now, and a huge amount of data, not just from those cloud service providers and cloud CMS systems that we talked about, but of course, voice over internet protocol VoIP services for the phones and more. So up until now, companies have had to use something known as MPLS. And you're right, I did have to look off camera for the notes. Multi-protocol label switching. Now, MPLS is kind of like a dedicated pathway for the individual offices and that main server, or individual offices communicating in a circle. Now, there's more to it than that, but ultimately what it is a connected pathway where devices of predefined location and identity are given priority. That means that VoIP lines might be given priority, backups or virtual machines from that main server are given priority. They are hugely expensive and not very evolving. They can't adapt or change very quickly, and each one of them would have to be set up manually and monitored semi-automatically. There will be failovers, but ultimately it's a lot more work and it's a lot more expensive, a lot more robust, and you do get good speeds, but it's hugely expensive and quite time exhaustive. Moving to the now, and we're looking at SD-WAN. SD-WAN, or Software Defined Wide Area Network, allows many things. For a start, you can pretty much ditch those MPLSs we just talked about, because SD-WAN allows you to take advantage of far more cost-effective, day-to-day available broadband connections from standard internet service providers without having to do dedicated pathways. And what you do is at each one of those locations, you replace the old-fashioned router with an SD-WAN enabled router device, or even some of the amalgamated things that we're seeing from providers where they've got switches and SD-WAN router technology bundled together to create a device that allows connections between all of the individual locations and that main office hub and those cloud services to be communicated on a far more automated and intelligent level. Periodically, I'm talking almost every second, your internet traffic is being monitored of its density, its locations and its type, and it will automatically assign priority of service and quality of service, and that's key in many cases, to the more important data transactions. Again, VoIP connections, virtual machine utilization, client data, quality of life, really, internet connections, and having SD-WAN connections around that network environment will not only lower the cost of the overall network connection costs, but it will also improve the rigidity and the robustness of the individually connected devices and services at each of those individual office locations and at the main server area. Now, there are other advantages to this. First and foremost, SD-WAN, being far more modern in development, is able to take advantage of far more modern connections, such as 10 GBE, 25 GBE, 40 GBE and higher, as well as wireless connections as well, allowing you to have multiple internet and slash broadband connections to the SD-WAN network device, and it can basically incorporate these connections into its topography and assigning which devices have priority. So if your office has more wireless devices than it has wired, it can become overly complex to assign not only device priority, but individual service priority. And having an SD-WAN that can incorporate these more future-proof connections is hugely advantageous, as well as it being more geared towards supporting those cloud services that have only been, reaching their height in the last 2 to 3 years. And remember, SD-WAN is something that is being incorporated at a much smaller business level, and it is only set to get even more popular as time wears on, with more and more users taking advantage of cloud services and bundling them into either a hybrid localized storage and cloud storage field, or just putting all the eggs into the cloud services, which I personally don't agree with, but I know a number of you out there will do that. So, is SD-WAN a fad? I don't think so. I think SD-WAN is one of those things that businesses are ready to get behind because they're sick of paying over the odds for dedicated network connections in case or when they need it. When you have a service with SD-WAN now where it is a system that will end up being more cost effective and a constant, and really take the stress out of that. Anyone that's ever had several VoIP lines running in their business or home environment will know that sometimes the connection is good, sometimes the connection is bad, and the ability to have control over that and not have to worry about it anymore is almost worth the cost of SD-WAN on its own, even when you don't include clusters and blobs of data being used in third-party providers and those third-party CMS systems being constantly accessible and synchronized. So this has been What is SD-WAN? We're going to talk more about this subject throughout the year as we're seeing more and more brands see the advantageous nature of SD-WAN and incorporating it into their own technology. We'll talk about this more as the year goes on, but if you found this video helpful, do click like and click subscribe to learn more. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.